Warning: this video talks about mature topics such as death, murder, and other NSFW themes. There will also be pictures shown that contain light amounts of blood and scars, as well as footage of games that include jump scares. If these sorts of things are triggering to you, make you uncomfortable, or if you are a minor, this is your chance to leave. Thank you. So, something that I personally find interesting is the fact that while we're now living in an era that heavily relies on the internet for so many of our tasks, that doesn't mean that everything we do on there will be saved. There's the sentiment that nothing on the internet is truly gone forever. And while that might be true in some kind of variety, probably, I don't think that means that finding lost things is a walk in the park. A popular YouTuber deletes a video or a live stream or something, there's a good chance that it'll be back up or it'll be posted to the site within a matter of hours by a fan or just someone who happened to watch the stream. Same can't be said for someone with, less than 10 subscribers and only does vlogs. They delete a video and that won't be up within a day. Oddly enough, this even applies to fandoms, and especially, I think, those that were born on the internet. Let's say, talk about the My Little Pony fandom, or as a lot of people know it, Bronies. They were a fandom that was born on the internet, born on 4chan boards in late 2010. But it can still be hard to find a lot of stuff from the early days, the early months, the early channels, because due to a variety of reasons, they either were deleted or taken down or just lost the time. On YouTube, you got stuff like old DVR uploads of the show where everything had kind of a more yellow tint from the TV broadcast. You've got fan dubs and parodies. I think just about every abridged series that fans tried to make for the show got taken down or just were set to private. And even stuff like, YTPs and PMVs, those are all gone. Even if they had a high view count, that doesn't mean that they'd be found easily. A good example is that I think for the longest time, we had no idea where the term brony was actually started on 4chan. We knew that it was a mix of the random board /B and pony, but, where was the first post? And then I think 2017, maybe 2018, we got lucky and a Tumblr user found it. And, something that should seem like it's a big moment for the fandom. It took us 6, 7, maybe 8 years to find it. Another good example, and this one's coming from a more personal spot, is when I first got into the fandom, one of the first things I found was a music video, or a series of music videos, that were all just Windows Movie Maker slideshows with various fan comics, Tumblr blogs, fan art, and they all had popular songs played behind it. And, it was 2010 version of popular songs. So it was pop music, 80s rock, Vocaloid songs, anime songs. And I think in the first upload that I will never forget, it was like a weird garage band demo, but it was like oddly relaxing. So I never got it out of my head. And the reason I'm talking about this is because it has a lot of impact for me, not just being the first video that I watched, but also it was a video that I would watch late at night in a time where I was still trying to figure out who I was. And hearing God Knows from Haruhi Suzumiya or Meltdown from one of the Vocaloids, for some reason that was just calming to me. And that made these videos more important to me than it would to most people who just see these as another fan music video from the early 2010s that had little effort in it. And then, I'd watch the videos occasionally just for that nostalgia base, and I tried watching it again recently, and I found out all the videos were set to private. I get why they happened, because these were videos with fan art from other people, with very little to almost no links to them, and with popular music, including from big pop songs and big music companies, and they love to copyright strike that. So better to private it and risk, cut the risk of getting your channel taken down than actually have it happen and losing a lot more than just your YouTube account. The only time I found the re-upload of these videos was on Daily Motion, because one of the videos got like over 1 million views. I think 5 million actually. So obviously it was just one of those channels that just re-uploads a popular video in the hopes that they'll get the views and they'll somehow get the runoff from that. What I'm meaning to say with all this is that not everything from the early days of fandom can be found easily. So that means that we should be more careful in archiving the things that we do still have and also cherishing them. Be it old pieces of fan art, old fanfics, even some old fan channels that are still around. I think Pony Pokey maybe still around. I hope so. But yeah. And with the Brony fan base, one of the sections that is somehow still kept in good condition and still, I still think preserved well, is oddly enough the horror section. Because in the early days of the fan base, like the first, I'd say, 1 to 2 years since it began, it was kind of wild and anything goes. And somehow the prevailing subculture in the Brony fandom was horror and grimdark. I think because it was a cute show for kids, and its fan base at the time was a lot of older men who came straight from 4chan, there was this need to make everything horror. We needed to go against the normal acute image. We needed to make it shocking. And that meant that anything went, like I said. Because back in the old days, there wasn't really a site for everyone to meet up or for different factions to kind of come together. You had parody videos on YouTube and the comment sections there. And you had the 4chan boards. And everyone hated you on 4chan. So, if you didn't like their kind of way of doing things, you were kind of screwed. Even Equestria Daily, our biggest site for news, events, comics, and everything, that was just a WordPress blog in 2011. It wasn't even its own site. It was just a random WordPress blog with random bits of news and the occasional comics and fan fiction that mostly came from the /co boards, maybe? I think. I have no idea. I'm not in 4chan culture. But going back to the horror topic, the 4chan boards are where a lot of where the seed for the horror fandom bloomed, because sometime in maybe 2011, when season 1 wasn't even done, a story was posted that basically shocked everyone that read it. It was something that we should have expected would have come, but it still got us by surprise, and it left its marks on the fandom, and even the whole, not just the horror subculture, but the whole fandom, for so very, very long. Of course, I'm talking about the infamous story, Cupcakes, and what it did to Pinkie Pie. Cupcakes is one of those things where, like the rest of the fandom, it came out so early on that we barely have that much to go off of for it. Like, we know it came out before the end of season 1, came out in early 2011. It was maybe posted by someone named Sergeant Sprinkles and it was posted to 4chan. But besides that, not much else. We don't have a concrete date of when it was posted. We don't have any screen caps, as of this recording anyways, of the original post and reactions to it. We just had, knowledge that it came out sometime in 2011 on 4chan. And even then, when talking about it, the content of the story itself overtakes any kind of discussion of where it came from and who actually wrote it. Because Cupcakes is one of those things that you know about it whether or not you're in the fandom. Because at some point or another, if someone talks about, bronies and the My Little Pony fan base, there's a good chance one of the things brought up is, oh hey, did you know one of their most popular fanfics is a story where the pink pony brutally massacres and kills the rainbow pony? And I get why, that sounds so bizarre to have in your fan base based on a show for, preteen kids. So why is it so popular? And again, this was in the early days of the fan base, and there was no check on things. It was all wild and unregulated. And by that I mean, one minute you might be watching a ponified version of Hardware Store by Weird Al. And the next moment you learn about Rainbow Dash's fun trip to the milk pool in Jartown. There's no balance. There's no restrictions. And this story was everywhere. Every major pony creator had to talk about it, or every big YouTuber that talked about fandom stuff, they talk about, oh, did you hear about the My Little Pony creepypasta? Ooh, it's so gory and spooky and violent and bloody. Ooh. But the thing about Cupcakes, now that it's all said and done, is that the story itself really isn't that good. And by that I mean, this was clearly meant to only be posted on 4chan boards, and it was only meant to get shock. The original post had a bunch of spelling mistakes and errors, and the whole thing is written where if you look at it now, you can see all the flaws and how it's executed, and how it's more written like it's just meant to be read once and to get shocks out of people. It's supposed to get like a, oh my god, I can't believe I'm reading this, or, oh, this is so disgusting, I hate this. And I don't mean that like it's trash. I just mean that its reputation hyped it up. It's kind of like with Sonic.exe, where you look at that story, and now you can say, oh, that is not a good story. That is trash. But because it included pictures with it, and it was in the early days of the internet's creepypasta phase, people found it scary. And most of the people that read it were preteen kids, 13 to 19, where horror on the internet was still kind of new to them, so stuff like that was terrifying. And it didn't help that later on in season 1, we got the episode Party of One, which showed Pinky with flat hair and a more psychotic state that people would then go on to associate with this fic, which is strange because the Pinky in Cupcakes is the normal version, and that's what makes it creepy. It's this whole mess and tangled web that the more you look into it, the more you realize it's kind of nothing and unimpressive, but it's impressive in the fact that it was able to spark so much. And when I say spark so much, I meant it sparked a lot. Like, when it came out, people would not stop talking about it. There were constant requests to post it on Equestria Daily, but because they wanted to keep up their, more decently friendly image, they wouldn't post it. But when they did, they finally posted it along with a bunch of alternate endings and sequels and stuff. They gave it the tag Grimdark as fuck. I am not even kidding. But yeah, another thing to talk about is how this impacted the fandom. And the way it impacted the fandom was, for the longest time, all you would get were cupcake sequels. With a shocking ending of, oh, she kills Rainbow Dash. She killed her friend. She's going to make it into a stuffed doll. Naturally, people were going to be like, no, I can make a better ending. And so what you got was a surge of what you expected. The ending where it's all a dream Rainbow Dash has and Pinky's fine. Or the version where it's a nightmare plaguing Rainbow Dash and she goes on to kill Pinkie Pie for it. And then the version of that story where she stabs Pinkie Pie, but then she realizes what she does and she backs off and they remake their friendship and it's all a mistake. Or you get the version where she kills Rainbow Dash and then goes on to kill other friends. Or the version where someone comes in and stops Pinkie Pie. Or the version where it's not serious at all. It's all just one big prank. Or the version where it's all just a movie. Or my personal favorite, that's also got more than one version of it, a version where the U.S. military bursts in and takes her out like she's Osama bin Laden. There's like two versions of that story. I kind of as a subgenre. But yeah, and for the longest time, whenever people drew Pinkie Pie in fan art or fanfics besides horror or fan comics, they would do things where like she was aware of the fic, or there was hints that maybe she had a darker side. Ooh, mysterious. Because she was already a character that could break the fourth wall in the show. So, for some reason, people associated in 2010, 2011, 2012, they associated fourth wall breaking with having a darker edge to them, having this dark side that they could just snap in a moment and kill everybody. Ooh, be careful around her. She might go psycho and kill everyone. And then, Party of One happened, and that version of Pinkie, later named Pinkamena Diane Pie, got her own cult following because she was so associated with the Cupcakes fic. And kind of like how with Cupcakes and the horror trend of the fandom spawned its own sub-community, Pinkamena Diane Pie would do the very same.
Tumblrbot asked, where would you most like to visit on your planet?
I don't leave my room. Ever. Started in August of 2011, the Ask Pinkamena blog was one of many pony-themed Ask blogs that were popular on Tumblr in the 2010s. Or at least the early 2010s anyways. What it was the site's big drawing feature was that other users could ask people questions and you could respond to them directly, and those would be seen as just posts. It wouldn't be like a reply to a comment. And so what people would do with this, especially artists and writers, is that they would set up pages as characters from media, be it video games, movies, or anime, and they'd respond to questions in character. It was kind of like roleplay, but everyone that viewed the blog was in on the roleplay. Sometimes these were just for wacky kind of joke answers or one-offs or headcanon stuff, and other times this would be used to lead into their own stories or crossovers with other blogs. I'd probably make a guess and say the most popular fan for this type of stuff was Homestuck, because there were so many AUs and versions of the characters at the time, so it only makes sense that they'd be the most popular. And Tumblr just loved Homestuck in the early 2010s. And I think, if I had to make a guess, the second most popular one would be My Little Pony. And a theme that ran through a lot of them was a more focus on adult content and adult themes. Because again, this was still in the early days of the fandom where we saw every single meme that was posted or every single headcanon and we'd all take it as fact, or we'd all put it in our own canon, headcanon, and make those true for the characters. So if someone said, oh, the Princess Celestia is a troll, then a bunch of ass blogs would focus on that. Or if someone said she was a pervert, you got the infamous Ask Princess Celestia blog. But one of the first ones was probably the Ask Pinkamena blog. And it was one of the first, and it was one of the most well-known, because this was still in the early days of the fandom, like I mentioned earlier. So people were kind of unsure if they wanted to go full adult, or if they wanted to stay in their PG roots. And that was kind of the big infighting at the time. So when this blog comes along that actively shows Pinkamena hurting others and being this grim, dark, and brooding, not brooding, but dark and sadistic character who openly enjoys torturing and murdering other ponies, and these were still in pony form. These weren't like humanized versions of the character. These were just characters who looked like the same ponies that we saw on TV every Saturday. People got upset. It's kind of harder to talk about this without evidence, but a lot of the old Tumblr blogs from that era are long gone, hard to find, or thanks to the lewd/adult materials ban from a few years ago, they're just inaccessible without third-party means, and that doesn't even guarantee that'll happen. But anyways, it's kind of obvious that a blog like Ask Pinkamena would get a lot of hate for it, because again, in these days, everyone hated the idea of this fan base based on a cartoon for little girls having adult things in it. And especially Tumblr. They hated the Brony fan base. So to see something like this, it got a lot of hate mail. And while I can't show evidence, just reading through the archived blog posts of Ask Pinkamena, it's clear that it got a lot of hate mail. But oddly enough, despite that, and the fact that it showed so much adult content, it was one of the most popular blogs around. It got so many followers, it got so many people reading it and reacting to it and drawing fan art of it. I don't think anyone ever saw it coming. But when I think about it, I also can see why. The blog is well written, it's funny, it's got great, fantastic art and lighting. It's got humor, it's aware of where it's being posted, it's aware of Tumblr culture, and makes fun of it. It's a blog that's just a genuine good time to read. It's not just edgy for edgy's sake. You know, it shows Pinkamena killing Fluttershy, and makes note of how people are going to get send in hate mail. But it's not just, ooh, look at the gore, look at the torture, look at the murder. It slowly kind of draws away from that over time. To explain, I can't tell when, because there are only so many posts on this, so I can't tell what would count as the beginning, middle, and end for this thing. Early on, it shows that Scootaloo is working with Pinkamena to harvest people, and the blog goes out of its way to show... Oh, police are passing by. They're coming to arrest me for talking about the ponies. But anyways, it shows that Pinkamena cares about her. She says multiple times that she wouldn't murder her, and that she's one of the few people in her life that she cares about. I think that's a good thing. I think, showing serial killers or murderous characters in ways that make you feel bad for them or feel any kind of emotion besides hatred for them is very much a hard act to pull off, I think. Even now with games like Danganronpa or the like, there's always going to be, arguments and discourse around whether or not we should like characters like Nagito Komaeda or Kokichi Oma, despite all the horrible things they've done in game. The Ask Amina blog was very much that. You've got this woman, this pony, who is actively going out and murdering people and doing much worse than them that I can't say because I want to get money off this sometime in the future. But also, it shows her talking about how she does have regret for these things at times, or at least she wants to be forgiven by her friend for her actions, and how she has. It talks about how she has depression and how she has these dark needs inside her that she needs to satiate, and she talks about what love is to her. And there's so much emotion behind it, or this feeling of connection, that you kind of forget that this is still a blog about a talking pink horse who killed her best friend and either stuffs them, makes them into suits, cannibalizes them. Yet you can still make it feel emotions. There's a lot more about this that can be said, but also not much else because the comic is extremely short. It had a short run and the author, Crooked Trees, they ended it because, in their own words, it got too big for them. So many people found out about it. They found out who the artist was, and it kind of becomes harder to do something like this when everyone knows who you are and knows what other stuff you make. Sometimes you want to be separate from some pieces that you make. It's just kind of a natural want. And they just kind of stopped doing it. And I respect that decision. If they didn't want to keep on going and forced to make content for this blog that at one point got like hundreds and hundreds of asks, and they want to stop that or pull away from that and focus on other things, or just have a less known profile online. I get that. Digi made a video about this when they were in the Brony community, and if I can still find it, I'll do my best to link it. It's back from early on in their career, and it's interesting to see how much they as a person have changed. But I still think it gets across why the comic works so well and why it's so liked. So if I can find it, I'll link to it. And even if the video is down and Digi doesn't want to be a part of the associated with that community anymore, which can be understandable. I think they left the transcript for it still up, so I'd still recommend reading it, and I'll link to it if I can. Now, Ask Pinkamena being a popular blog is kind of naturally would have things come after it. And for the longest time, much like with the original Cupcakes fic, a lot of successors or blogs that tied into, that were influenced by this blog or be in the same universe as this blog started to pop up. And there's way too many to count. And even if I did, a lot of them are now offline and hard to find archived of. So I'm going to talk about just two. Two that are, I'd say, just as impactful and had as much reaching impact as the Ask Pinkamena blog. The first being Scootaloo the Sadist. And that was a direct continuation of the Ask Pinkamena blog after it came to an end. And I think that blog worked well enough where I consider it to be part of the same story, even though it's a different writer and a different artist. But I think it conveys the same emotions that were portrayed in the original blog. To say that if you accepted this as just part 2, I'd get that. There's another one that I want to talk about next, but I do want to say that personally, the way the original Ask Pinkamena blog ended, I unironically think is fantastic. I know I'm kind of jumping around topics a bit, and I don't have a script because scripts don't work as well for me in my brain. So I'm kind of just talking at random about various parts. But I legitimately think the way this story, the original story for this ended, is fantastic. It's easy to look up. There's plenty of YouTubers who have dubbed the comic online. There's ways to find archives of the site in the Ask blogs. But seriously, I'd recommend just kind of. It doesn't take long to read through all of it. It takes about 10 minutes to read through all the asks because it was, again, a short lived blog. And it was on and off, so that means there weren't, the posts weren't continuous. But yeah, Ask Pinkamena, I think, is one of the best pieces of early MLP culture and one of the strongest defining parts of it, even though it was so early on. Next, we're going to look at another semi-tie-in slash sequel slash part of the same universe as the Ask Pinkamena, but it's a project that took on a life of its own and has even surpassed it in terms of popularity and being well known. Strap in, because if you thought everything covered up until now was weird and off-putting and NSFW, you have not seen anything yet. Let's talk about Little Miss Rarity. Does the light mean it's on? I suppose it does. Alright, let's get this over with. Well then, hello everyone. I am Rarity. I just got in an awful scuffle with Opalescence and I don't wish to show my face outdoors for a while. Well, I mean, they don't look too bad, right? The scars? Mommy's still pretty, right? Regardless, Opalescence has been punished. But I digress. This isn't about her. This is a message to Pinkamena, as she started to call herself. I know what you've been doing, Pinkamena Pie. I've seen your little Tumblr page. Torture? Corruption? My word, Pinkamena, you need help. Little Miss Rarity is a Tumblr blog that came out at the right time and somehow managed to avoid heaps of controversy. It came out right as the Pinkamena blog was dying down or had ended. And despite its nature of being a very heavily sexually explicit blog with themes of gore and torture alongside other acts, it never got a lot of controversy. Or at least, it never got on the level of controversy that a lot of the other more popular MLP Tumblr blogs did. And to people who've been in this fandom since the beginning, they already know what I'm talking about. And for those that don't, there was a very popular blog based on Princess Celestia that was also sexually explicit, and that was a less consensual sort, and a whole bunch of drama sprung up around that. But somehow I never saw any kind of takedown campaign for Little Miss Rarity. I never saw any fears of Hasbro reaching out to it or striking it down. And the thing is that the blog is still ongoing. It's been almost 10 years since this thing started up, and it's still ongoing. It's not consistent, but it's still there. And it's a very interesting blog because you could tell it developed with the writer and artist as it went along. It started out, as your simple Tumblr blog. It was just a bunch of questions with maybe an occasional event or crossover every once in a while, but for the most part it was just the simple ask a character, character responds, with this one being a scarred up Rarity with a more sexually outgoing nature to her. And that was kind of reflective of how the fan base treated Rarity at the time, because this is back when the MLP fan base was very much give the characters this one trait and then stick to that trait. And with Rarity, she got hit with the idea of, oh, because she's very uptight and talks fancy, she just must be sexually active or a whore. There's a whole bunch of issues to go along with that, but that's just how it was at the time. And this blog portrayed her as that, but it didn't do it in a bad way. She was very much open about her sexuality and her interest in both genders and how she liked her sex kinkily, but it wasn't portrayed as we should boo her or make fun of her for it. It was just who she was, and people really liked it. Another funny thing about this blog that I just kind of think about a lot is that this came out in the era when bronies were defendant. They were so very defendant that the community wasn't perverted and that we weren't furries. We weren't into that kind of stuff. We weren't into that. We weren't those kinds of people. We weren't furries. We don't yiff. We love and tolerate. We're a nice community. But then this was one of the most popular blogs around, and everyone in the fandom at least knew or heard of it. And no one said any issues with it, even though it was very much, it was anthropomorphic sex. It was an anthropomorphic sex blog. And it was one of the most popular ones in the fandom. And that's just hilarious to me that we were so intent on saying, no, we're not furs, we're nothing like them, we're completely separate, we don't like this stuff. But then when we look at this or the Princess Celestia blog, we're like, oh yeah, we love that stuff, more of that please, give us more. Also, this kind of came out at a time where there was a lot of lewd stuff in the fandom, and that's an issue itself that I'm not going to get into, or at least I'm not going to give an opinion on that. It's kind of even now there's a controversial kind of debate on what should we make lewd art of children's cartoons. And my bigger issue that I'll say was an issue, was the fact that it was way too easy for people to stumble onto this stuff without having to look for it. Like, if you just wanted to find My Little Pony art or find My Little Pony pictures, there was a good chance you'd find erotic art or art that was clearly made with adults in mind, and you didn't need to do anything special to do it. So that means that it was probably super easy for minors to find this stuff. If they just wanted to find My Little Pony art, there was a good chance they'd find either lewd art or, overly gory horror art. And again, I'm surprised that never happened with this. People found it easily, but that doesn't mean that people protested it easily. No one, again, as far as I know, no one brought up any issues or protested this thing, or at least in a way that it got major coverage by, the places where the fandom would meet up. I ran into this, I think, the same way a lot of other people ran into this with the Mindless Gonzo dubs of the comics. Mindless Gonzo is a YouTuber who I'm pretty sure is still somewhat in the MLP fandom, and if they are, good on them. It's, it's easy to fall out when it's a show going as long as this one is, but he's still in it and still does dubs for it and still does voices for stuff. So, and that's how I ran into this stuff. I was watching a bunch of comic dubs online one night, and I just happened to run into his YouTube video that dubbed the first, few posts on the blog. Looking back at it now, it can be easy to kind of cringe at it since it is a guy doing a high-pitched voice for a woman, and it very much falls into a lot of the kind of how people would dub comics at the time. And also he semi-inserts himself as a camera person, which that's always been weird to me, but also that was kind of how I liked stories to be shown back then. If they were dubs of stuff, if there was like a narrator or other character there, that could be anybody, and you could insert yourself into them. So I like that kind of stuff. Getting back to the blog itself, like I've said, it started with, it followed the typical Tumblr format, but then as it went on, it slowly developed a story, and it slowly became, it became bigger and bigger as its popularity grew, and it got really weird. Whenever I reread the thing, I'll do it in one long run. I won't do it in bits. I'll reread the whole comic from start to end. And it's amazing to see it start off as this dark, lewd blog with slight horror themes, then grow into a cat being made into a doll that becomes its own nightmarish creature, which then leads into a universe reset, which then leads into hunting down Lovecraftian styled monsters. And I remember the first time I reread it in years, I texted my friend the whole time while I was reading it, what the fuck is going on with Little Miss Rarity every few minutes? And I don't mean that in a bad way, I don't think. I think it's good that the author wanted to grow from it and make their own things from it and do the story they want to tell with it. It just can be weird to see where it started and where it is at some point and then where it is at later points. It can just be a rush. And I think that this is the only blog that can really do something like that. I feel like if any other type of pony content tried to do that, it wouldn't be as successful. It wouldn't be as much of a hit. And this is very much a once-in-a-lifetime moment. This blog is something that can't really, I don't think could ever really be replicated ever again. Little Miss Rarity is a thing where if people hate it, I understand why. And if you dislike it, I understand why. It's one of those things where it develops small amounts of drama behind it, but nothing big. But people can still be affected by drama, and if they don't want to touch something ever again, they don't want to touch something ever again. I get that. But again, I still admire it for what it's doing, for how it's still evolved and how it's still going and growing, and the author still wants to make this and still wants to do this. And whenever I read the Little Miss Rarity Tumblr posts, they're either bits from the comic or they're updates talking about how the writer is going through hard times and they need all the support they can get. But they at the end of every post they talk about how they aren't giving up the blog, they aren't giving up the comic, they still want to get it done. And that's admirable. This thing is almost 10 years old, and they still want to keep going. They don't want to stop. They don't want to focus on getting, they want to move on to other stuff. This is what they want to do. And I admire that. That's something that I don't really see much in fandoms, because a lot of times people just jump off for their own reasons, and I get that. So yeah, Little Miss Rarity. There's a lot to talk about with it, and it requires its own separate video to go into the themes and the story and the art and the characters. And maybe one day I will do that, but I think it's time to move away from the Tumblr side of things and jump into another side of the horror fan base that was just as big. It was almost hard to escape at some points. I want to talk about the video game side of the MLP fan base. Just a quick little addendum before we move on to the next section. The creator of Little Miss Rarity, Little Miss J, I did get in contact with them and asked what was okay to cover, and they said anything, so, that's nice. The only thing they want to know is that the blog is planning on making a big comeback sometime in the future, but I don't know when, but, if you're still into this stuff that I talked about here, go follow it. It'll update. Who knows when? It's still open for asks. And if you want, a better understanding of, getting to know the creator more and just kind of seeing the community that this series made, they do have a public Discord because Tumblr kind of sucks now. At least for creators like them, it just sucks. So yeah, I'll be linking to that in the description, and give them support if you can, and if this is the stuff that interests you. Alright, moving on, let's get to video games. When it comes to looking at the game side of the MLP fan base, it has quite the interesting history. A lot of the stuff is either halfway finished and stopped because of stuff like cease and desist letters, or is now inaccessible because they were web-based and used Flash, and now Flash is defunct and there's no way to use them without probably a bunch of tricks and messing around with your computer. A lot of games were kind of just innocent little basic platformers or point and click or endless shooter type things, stuff that wasted time and really had no depth to it. But there was some stuff that could go deeper. A lot of RPG Maker based games, stuff made for the game Mugen. I think most interesting were probably the games Fighting is Magic, which did get a cease and desist, but then that became Them's Fighting Herd, which is now a legit game that almost was at EVO before everything in 2020 happened. And then the other one that was of note was Super Lesbian Horse RPG. Yes, that was a real title, which was made by Bobby from Pony Pokey. That got a cease and desist, I think, and now it's its own game called Super Lesbian Animals RPG. You should go check it out. But that's not what we're here to talk about. What we're here to talk about is the horror games. There wasn't a lot of horror games, but there were a few. Most notably and most interesting, if you want to call it that, was Luna Game. And it's interesting because the history of it is well documented. It was originally posted to Equestria Daily back when they would have links to fan games that you would have to download to your computer. And what it was all you did was you were Luna in a field, and you walked along, and then BAM! Scary jump scare image. It was either one or two images of Pinkie Pie or a creepy apple bloom that legitimately freaked me out, and it still kind of does. And it would stay on that photo for about, a minute, 30 seconds with creepy music playing, and then it would force you back to the desktop. You couldn't exit out unless you, forced your way out. But for the most part, it made you hang on there. And then what it would do was it would spam wherever you had installed the game with text files and images of the photo it showed you, all titled "The End Is Nay." I don't know how we found that creepy back then, because thinking about that now, that is a stupid pun, and it kind of ruins the horror. And, a lot of people playing this, they were not used to something like this, and everyone thought, oh shit, is this a virus? Did we get a virus from this? Thankfully it wasn't. It was more just a, bit of programming that was just meant to be a mean prank. But it did lead to Equestria Daily banning downloads from the site and only being browser-based games only. But Luna Game is one of those things where the first game is interesting when you talk about it, but besides that, there's not much to it. And it got a bunch of fan-made sequels, and they're all kind of to me. They kind of just rely on the same kind of cheap jump scare tactics and stuff. Where it gets interesting is the game Story of the Blanks, which is more a actual kind of unnerving, creepy game. I haven't played it in a while, and I'm going to add in the footage for it post me talking about it, so I might be all jumbled in how it goes, but it was based on a fanfic, or maybe the fanfic came after, I can't fully recall, but you played as Apple Bloom, and one day when you're lost in the Everfree Forest and separated from Twilight, you wind up on this weird town where no one has cutie marks and they don't know what that is. And it goes, it goes downhill from there. I can't fully recall the story, but all I know is that it's got a good unnerving vibe to it. And it's all set up in the 8-bit style that a lot of Flash games were using at the time, where it's not NES 8-bit, but it's more Atari 8-bit, low minimum graphics stuff. And the music was all chiptune, and, it was more, there wasn't really much challenge to it. It was more just know how to run or be faster than the opponent so that they don't catch you and you die. And that's about it. But the atmosphere and the way it depicted everything was legitimately creepy. And I feel like it was more trying to be a horror story and not just a, ooh, we jump scared you, we got you, got you kind of game. I think that makes it interesting. Another thing that the games tended to have, from what I recall, was either secret horror in it or references to horror. A lot of times games would have characters referring to lines or moments from, Grimdark fanfics like Cupcakes. Or in the case of the next game we're going to talk about real quickly, Super Philly Adventure, it was its whole secret ending. The game itself is just a basic kind of, I think, semi get the thing to solve this thing kind of game where there's different endings depending on how bad you do and how good you do. But what made it interesting and stick out was if you played the game at or after 10 p.m., it would, and you go to a certain area, it would go creepy. And you would be told not to go further. So if you went further, of course, you'd get lost in the Everfree Forest and you would be hunted down and killed. And then at the end, it would show a jump scare. And it was kind of a tie-in to both Story of the Blanks and Luna Game with what it referenced. And it relies on, a jump scare, but I kind of always found games where you can only play it after a certain time, or where it requires you to play it in the dark, or it's a secret and you have to look it up. I find that interesting. That's stuff that actually I find scary. Yeah, it relies on a cheap jump scare, but I still find it pretty scary. I think horror in MLP-based games is something that could be looked into more. It's just that creepy games, usually when it comes to web-based ones or online ones, fall into the same tactics. A lot of them rely on, Sonic.exe style of horror, where it's just walk in a straight line and then a jump scare happens. And then you do it again, and then another jump scare happens, and you do it again, and another jump scare happens, and then it looks into your computer data to find your name, and then it says your name, and it's like, ooh, spooky. And, you play it, you get it done in 5 minutes, and the scare is gone. It's lost its horror. And I feel like if someone were to make an actually horror-based game, that'd be interesting, and not just a Sonic.exe or a Slender type where it's just you're running around a cramped space looking for the 8 notes to collect or whatever, and the creature following you kind of just pops in whenever, and there's no real, it's kind of luck based. That has its entertainment for 5 minutes, but then when that's done, what next? It's no longer scary when you know what's happening. So I don't know. Will there be an MLP horror game? Are there ones I don't know of? Probably. Or probably not with how Hasbro strikes down projects. But, maybe someone will work on one and then force to make it into their own thing and have it grow from that. You never know. I think it's about time we wrap this up. So, yeah. Let's move on to an epilogue.
This shit's divine. It's like the singing of fucking angels.
Closing out on this whole semi-retrospective look-back thing, there's a lot that I don't know what to say, and also it feels like there's a lot I want to say, because very much looking at this and where the MLP fandom is now, it's kind of a sign of how much it's changed. You could make a whole movie, or even a documentary, just on the fandom itself and how it's changed in its 10-year run. Because we're still kind of semi-going at a decent rate after the, Friendship as Magic ended 2019 after 9 seasons. But the comic's still going strong, and there's a new season on the... Not a new season, a new series on the way that's in the same universe, but in the far, far future. So that'll be interesting to see. And very much the people who make up, this fan base are different than the main people that made up the fan base when it first started. And I feel like this horror section is very much, it's important to the history of it. The stuff it brought out can't be ignored. And I can't say how much it changed things or how much it, had an influence on people in the fan base or what long-lasting effects it had. I will say that it existed and it can't really be ignored. As we close out, there are a few things that I want to say. I mentioned Bobby from Pony Pokey and the YouTuber formerly known as Digibro. They're both trans now. They're both trans women now. So please keep that in mind. And if I did, and looking through it, I didn't do anything to dead name them or to misgender them, which is good. But still, I'm bringing that up now so that people don't get that mistaken. Another thing I want to bring up is the fact that, again, Little Miss Rarity isn't done, and the creator, Little Miss J, is saying that they are planning for it to make a big comeback sometime in the future. I can't say when, but look out for that if that kind of content is interesting to you. I'm not going to judge. Also, I want to point out there is a ton of horror stuff in here that I didn't talk about. I didn't talk about Rainbow Factory. I didn't talk about Shirley's Garden. I didn't talk about what kind of horror stuff they did for the rest of the main 6. And that kind of happened because I realized this video was going on way too long. And that would probably be best in its own video. Also, I do want to do a video on the Brony, a look back on the Brony fanbase in general, on both the good and the bad, because I've been seeing a lot of look backs from, people like Jenny Nicholson and that one YouTuber who was name I can't remember who talked about that one, the last Pegasus Con. But those are from voices of people who either aren't in the fandom or are out of the fandom, which, I get why. But I feel like it'd be interesting to talk about the fandom from someone who is still currently in it and looks back on it, because there are a lot of good things and a lot of bad things in the Brony fandom that needs to be brought up and talked about. And I feel like someone who's still in it kind of has that voice where they kind of can explain it best and can testify to certain departments of it. But I don't know when that will be or when the next MLP horror video will be. But yeah, making this video took a lot longer than expected for some reason. Mostly because life's been busy for me and I'm not a casual video maker yet. I want to learn to be, and hopefully I will. But at the moment, this is still kind of an on and off habit for me. So hopefully I'll make a new video sometime in the upcoming months. I don't know when. I don't know what it will be about. But, subscribe to the channel and keep notified when I drop. I just want to say big thanks for watching this whole thing to the end if you did. And, if there's anything that I missed or that I should bring up in the next episode of this or in my episode about Brony culture, please let me know and I'll look into it. I like talking about fandom stuff and I like talking about Bronies because it's something that means a lot to me. It helped make me who I am. But until then, thank you again for watching. This is TimeGal25, and whether it be morning, afternoon, or night, it's always a nice, cool night when you're with me. Until next time. Surprise re-upload, reposting of the original video thing. This is a new recording made months and months after I posted the original MLP horror video, because after posting it, I got feedback from it, and a lot of people said the audio wasn't mixed properly and that it was kind of all over the place. And since I didn't really know much about that kind of stuff at the time, I didn't know what to do, but now Filmora has stuff like auto-normalization for that kind of stuff, so I feel more confident in mixing better, even if it's just leaving it up to machine and hoping that auto-normalization is just balancing things out. I might be wrong, who knows, but I haven't deleted the original video, I've just unlisted it. It'll probably still be in a playlist of my videos, so that people who still want to see that one can see that. And I'm keeping it up also because I like the comments on it. I don't want to get rid of those. It gives me ideas. It lets me engage with people. And there was barely any kind of views on the last one, so I don't know how much views this one will get. Who knows? It's Halloween season, so maybe posting it here with some Grimdark in the tag/title. Maybe that'll be better. But yeah. I also plan on releasing this in an MP3 format because I've been told by people that I'm very close to that they like my voice. It's very relaxing, so, you know, having something like this to listen to for whatever reason, you know, if you want to do that, there you go. Hopefully a link to Mediafire will be in the description when this new version gets posted, or at least at some point in the future. If I'm bold, and I know I'm not, maybe I'll make some new additions to the other segments as well, added visuals or whatever, but I can't really think of anything to add. Going over stuff a few months down the line from when I originally posted the first video, not much has changed. I think the really big change that happened between the posting of that and this being recorded is that the, at least supposed, creator of Luna Game revealed themselves on Reddit, talking about their history of making all the games. They're even saying, you know, you can doubt me, but I don't really have any reason to lie about this, so I believe them. They even have an email set up where you can send them questions related to the game and replay them if you really want to, experience it for yourself. I'd probably go more into it, but YouTuber IzzyZZZ just put out a video detailing the whole Luna Game debacle/history in a way that's really done and well thought out. And I'm jealous of that kind of skill, and I want to be able to achieve that. But, you know, if you want a more comprehensive look and understanding of what Luna Game is, I'd say check that out. Making this video was very fun for me. I enjoyed it. It was me getting to talk and hyperfixate on something that's really cool to me. And while it wasn't the best in terms of structure and background noise, I still don't have a full studio/recording area set up yet. It's kind of whatever is most convenient when I feel like I can actually record. I just kind of go off that. But hopefully, you know, I'll get better with time. I do still plan on making a video part 2 of this, talking about the other creepypastas, because there's a lot I missed. So yeah, look forward to that. This will probably be one of 2 videos that I hope to have up in October, and since they're both horror related, you can say these are part of a Halloween series of videos. And to go with the music that I'm hopefully playing along in the background with this, let's say, welcome to hell. Hope you enjoy your stay.
Bet my money on a stupid horse, I lost that. So I ran out to the track to get my cash back. I just gotta leave this place with a big bag. So I found a fucking jockey and I grabbed that.